Hi, and welcome to my Kyrgyzstan road trip series. Today we are leaving Bishkek and making our way to the first destination, a little town called Barskoon, where I spent my birthday doing a horseback ride. Before we get to that, let's talk about leaving Bishkek though. First of all, I had something really weird happen the night before I left. I was walking back from the convenience store when a little boy I had passed, who was probably 5 or 6 years old, ran up behind me and started punching me right on my spine super hard. I know he was little, but he was punching freakishly hard. I whipped around and looked at him like he was the spawn of Satan, and before I could even get anything out of my mouth, he ran away. I've never in my life, anywhere, at home or abroad, been attacked by someone, and I don't care if it was a child, it was absolutely psychotic. Anyway, the next day leaving town, there was some road work which caused traffic, and you had to drive on gravel roads. Once you got out of town, the road was nicely paved and easy to drive. Just did my first gassing up. I was only down a quarter of a tank and it was $14.80 to fill it up, which I'll show the conversion later. Anyway, so what you do is you go in and you tell them how much you want to add in it, like add to your tank. I did a full tank, I just said full tank. And you tell them the number, like 95, like the gas number, I mean. And then you just go out and you fill it and then you go back in and pay. Okay, I read about this happening. Very cute though. Okay, guys. About 150 kilometers from Barskoon, the road started alternating between patches of tarmac and stretches of really rocky gravel road. You could never fully get back up to speed on the paved section because as soon as you did, you would have to slow way down because you'd be back on that rocky gravel portion. I'm literally stuck behind a truck of cows. So a lot of the towns look like this. The lake was beautiful when it came into sight and I wanted to check it out, but because of that long drive, I didn't end up stopping. I just passed like this beach area and they had these like cabanas with, I don't know, they look like tropical cabanas. It's really pretty. There's like a huge monument perched on that mountain. It's humongous. They have like monument things all over the place of people. My plan was to stay the night there, go horseback riding the next day on my birthday, and leave the following morning to continue on to Karakol. I'm not even sure what to say about this portion of the trip. I don't even like to think about it. The place I selected did have good reviews, and I don't know if they just have very different standards or if I just happen to be unlucky, but it was the horseback ride from hell. The family that ran it is very, very nice. They're very good people. At a glance, the lodging did appear modern and nice, but it didn't really feel clean. And the bathroom had the worst sewage smell ever. This scent stick was my savior. My older sister bought me one, and I'll tell you, do yourself a favor and pick up one from the Dollar Tree. These scent sticks are the greatest thing in the world and have saved me so many times. Someone on the plane smells, sniff the scent stick. Stinky bathroom, inhale the scent stick. Stuffed up nose, breathe in the scent stick. I love it, and I do not travel without one. Anyway, at dinner that night, I tried these weird things that I thought were meringues, but they were actually extremely salty, chalky, dried cheese stick things. I thought they were pretty disgusting, but the next night when I tried them again, they kind of grew on me. You just have to eat them in small bites if you decide to try it. I think they're called Kurt, but the ones I see online don't look like the ones I ate. Mine looked like it had been piped out of a pastry bag. It was like a little log with lines in them. So getting onto the horseback riding, when I was researching, I did see people who had never even been on a horse before doing the horse ride. And I explained well beforehand that even though I've been riding several times going back to when I was a child, I'm still very much a beginner. These rides are advertised for all levels, so I thought I would be fine. Well, this horseback ride was not even close to beginner, and I literally felt like bursting into tears on the ride, but I had to keep going. The terrain was extremely steep. There was extremely loose rock. We weren't even on trails. We were making our own shit up, and certain parts were so steep we couldn't even ride our horses. We had to hike up and downhill with a slipping horse behind us. So the host at my lodge was not feeling well, so he had one of his guides take me and this other girl out for a ride. The guide didn't speak a lick of English, and the only advice I was given was to keep my balance. The girl riding with me was a very experienced rider who's a jumper and exercises people's horses for a living. She had recently done a multi-week horse trek in Mongolia, so she was very experienced, and even she, at the end of the ride, told me she was scared at parts and had never been on such steep terrain before. Okay, disclaimer before we get into it. Recounting the story here does not even begin to capture what it was actually like. So this is kind of like a nutshell version. And of course, any footage I have was taken on easy parts. I have no footage from those extremely scary parts that I'm going to talk about because I could not film while I was doing that. It started out in a beautiful valley, and I thought, oh, this is nice. This is exactly what I was hoping for. Then our guide starts pointing up this mountain like that's where we're going. I couldn't tell if he was joking or not because it looked very high and steep, but he was definitely not joking. The trek up was steep with sheer sides, and my horse kept tripping on the loose rock. The trail was very narrow, but I was trying to stay calm, keep my body relaxed. I didn't want my horse to feel my tension. He was a very, very good horse, by the way, very good-natured and obedient. The path eventually started to widen again and felt less steep, so I started feeling more relaxed. We stopped for a picnic and a rest. And after our picnic, the ride was really beautiful. We went through some pastures with cows and creeks and open terrain. It was wide and flat, which was perfect. My horse even did a little jump across a creek, which was kind of fun because I've never been on a horse that jumped before. We began our descent, which was narrow and rocky, but better than the trail that we ascended on. My horse did trip 4 or 5 times, and it wasn't like a little trip, it was like a stumble, and it was kind of freaky. After that descent, we started ascending again, which I thought was odd because I assumed we were heading back down to the valley where we started. Well, this began a series of steep ascents and descents where we had to make our own trail on parts and were bushwhacking through vegetation. The first steep ascent, we had to get off of our horses and hike up a hillside covered in scree, again extremely steep. So I'm holding the reins with one hand, trying to scramble up a slippery, steep, rocky mountainside with my terrible ankle. I had no clue hiking would be involved. I finally told him I couldn't do it anymore, so we got back on our horses who were standing in a very precarious position tilted on a steep mountainside, and they had to work so hard to get to the top. They were exhausted. The descents were made up switchbacks where our horses had to sidestep down and they kept tripping. I noticed our guide's horse's legs were looking very goofy and warbly, and at dinner that night, the girl I was riding with brought it up to me that she noticed it, and she kept thinking, what would happen if this horse falls on him? I kept thinking the same thing and about myself too. One slip from that horse and he could crush my bones or kill me, and how the hell would I get helicoptered out of there? I was so tense and stressed, and by that point I didn't even care about trying to hide it from my horse. The very final descent was so steep he made us walk our horses down, which of course you're guiding your horse down and the trail is too narrow to walk beside them, so they're behind you and they're tripping. And again, what happens if the horse slips and crashes into you on the trail? My ankle was so bad that my leg was shaking, and eventually the guide took 2 horses and the other girl took my horse, and I came down slowly at my own pace. I was so pissed by the time I got to the bottom, and I made sure to show it on my face. I felt like my life was put in danger. It was 3.5 hours of pure stress and fear trying to get back down to the valley where we started. And look, I go storm chasing, I've done great white shark diving, I've belayed into a Mulan in Alaska, I've done hut-to-hut hiking in Switzerland, I day hiked Mount Whitney. I'm not a stranger to risky things or physically difficult things, but I will tell you that this ride was the most afraid for my life I've ever been. I could not stop thinking about that ride for days after because it upset me so much. I still don't even like to think about it. They did get me a big cake and gave me a nice scarf that night for my birthday, but I think that was probably the worst birthday I've ever had. And the part that really irked me was that our guide looked highly annoyed with me, like I was being an inconvenience to him, even though I was paying for the ride. At the end, he told the girl with me that she did really good and is a better rider than him. I'm sitting there like an absolute effing beginner who managed to do the entire ride as well without falling off and dying, and all he did was look annoyed at me. So that was my terrifying birthday ride. I didn't even want to do a video on this because I didn't even know where to begin about it, but I just wanted to share my experience about horseback riding there. This right here is the hillside that we came down. And we actually did up that mountain and down probably 3 different times on 3 different mountains on the way back. The next day I headed to Karakol, which I used as a home base for day hikes in the region. So that is where we'll leave off. Make sure you hit subscribe and notify so you know when those videos come out because I did some very beautiful hikes there that you'll want to see. Okay, see you next time.